This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Good Tavach, I want to share with you a beautiful thought of Rabbi Yosef Engel and try to use it to answer an important question on the mitzvah of Tefillin. We know the Gemara tells us in Masechta Shabbos and Daf Kuf Lamed that Tefillin need a guf naki like Elisha Bal Knafayim. That when you wear Tefillin, one is required to have a clean body. The question is, why would that be so? Why would one be required to have a clean body when they wear Tefillin? We don't find this by other mitzvahs. Mitzvah of Sukkah doesn't require guf naki. Why does the mitzvah of Tefillin require a guf naki? Comes Rabbi Yosef Engel in the Beis HaOitzar, and Rabbi Yosef Engel says a very interesting idea to explain the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah and Daf Yud Zayin. The Gemara says that karkafta d'lo manach tefillin, an item, an entity, a person who doesn't wear tefillin is called poishe Yisrael begufan, a sinner of the Jewish people with their body. Why are they called poishe Yisrael begufan? We don't find that expression by those who fail to observe other mitzvahs. So Rabbi Yosef Engel points out that there is a diyun in halacha, and there's a question in halacha: are a person's clothing considered part of their body? Are they batel to the body? Or are they considered outside of the body? Toisus and Chulin and Ayin Aleph on Beis says a lashon that begadim, that a person's lavush, are batel to him, and they're considered part of the body. Umikoichai boi lahem atoma. So that the shita of Toisus seems to be that begadim are part of the body. Sanhedrin Kuf Yud Beis, a woman's peonachras, a woman's wig in the Ir Hanidachas. We know that if a person is a member of an Ir Hanidachas, if they themselves did not worship Avodah Zarah, they are spared, but their possessions not. However, the clothing that a person is wearing, the Gemara says, is part of their body, and therefore is not considered property, and is batel to them, and is also spared. So these are two sources where a person's clothing is considered part of the body. On the other hand, we know that a person can't wear clothing in a mikvah. The clothing is considered a chatzitza. That means the clothing is outside of their body. Also, we find regarding maga tuma that if tuma touches the clothing, it doesn't render the person tameh because it's not actually contacting the body. So there is somewhat of a question in halacha whether begadim are batel to the body or not batel to the body. But says Rabbi Yosef Engel in Svara, even if begadim are not part of the body, a beged that a person is obligated to wear, in his opinion, would certainly be batel to the body and part of the body, and therefore tefillin, which you're mechuyev to wear, would then be batel to the body and part of the guf. Therefore, the Gemara in Zvachim on Yud Tes says that tefillin is not considered yitor begadim, which means that a kohen could only wear 4 begadim, kohen gadol 8 begadim, cannot wear more begadim. Why then is tefillin allowed to be worn when one is wearing bigdei kahuna? Why is that not yitor begadim? The Marsham and the Shas Chuvas Meishav Davar say, well, the problem of yitor begadim is only other bigdei kahuna, but not other begadim. However, says Rabbi Yosef Engel very simply, tefillin is not considered yitor begadim because tefillin is not external to the body. Since one is mechuyev to wear tefillin, it becomes batel to the body and part of the body, part of the entity of the guf. Therefore, if a person doesn't wear tefillin, what does the Gemara call them? Karkafta doimanach tefillin is called poishe Yisrael begufan. They're sinning with their body, because since tefillin becomes part of the body, a body without tefillin is not just a body that has not fulfilled a mitzvah. The body is deficient, because with the wearing of the tefillin becomes part of the guf ha'adam. And perhaps then we could explain that is the reason why tefillin require a guf naki. Because it's different than other mitzvahs. Other mitzvahs, you merely perform them. Tefillin becomes part of the body. And therefore, if the body is not clean, then the tefillin are becoming part of a guf, which is not naki. It's not just you have to make sure that your body is clean when you're wearing tefillin. No, when you're wearing tefillin, the tefillin become part of your guf. And therefore, if the guf is not naki, then it's a pegam in the levisha of the tefillin, which have become part of the guf. Perhaps with this we could explain one added thing. The Bir Halacha and Siman Chav Hey explains the Mechaber. And the Mechaber says first you wear talis and then you wear tefillin. And the reason is because Malin b'kodesh ve'in maridin. And the Shagas Aryeh and other Achronim ask, Malin b'kodesh ve'in maridin, Malin b'kodesh ve'in maridin only applies within one chefza. A tefillin shal yad, you can make a tefillin shal rosh. A tefillin shal rosh, you can't make a shal yad. Or, for example, within the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah, you go up from 1 to 8 and not down from 8 to 1. But when you have two different mitzvahs, then we don't use the rule of Malin Mekadosh Ve'in Maridin. The Gemara in Hariyos, the Mishnah in Hariyos, the Mishnah in Zvachim, we use the rule Kal Makudesh Mechaverai, Kaidem Es Chaverai. And the Bir Halacha seems to answer this question by saying, no, Malin Mekadosh Ve'in Maridin Al Ha'adam Kai. It's going on the person. What's the Bir Halacha saying? What does he mean, Al Ha'adam Kai? But still, Talis and Tefillin are two separate mitzvahs. And the Har Tzvi explains that what the Bir Halacha means is that when it comes to Talis and Tefillin, these are not just mitzvahs that you perform, but the Talis and the Tefillin actually become part of the person wearing it. You're lavush in a Talis, you're me'utar, and you're mekusha with Tefillin, and therefore, there is one entity here. There is the entity of the person. The person who has the talis on is then elevated by putting on the tefillin. So it's not two different mitzvahs, but rather it's one entity, one person. But based on this Rabbi Yosef Engel, we explain this, we understand this even in a deeper way. That when a person's obligated to wear something, the item that he wears becomes part of his guf. So the one entity of the guf is being elevated. It's not two different mitzvahs, talis and tefillin. It's one Adam who at first is an entity with a talis and then is elevated to become an entity with a tefillin. And Be'ezus Hashem, again, as we mentioned, this gives us new insight into why the mitzvah of tefillin requires a guf naki. So I wish everyone a good tevach, bracha, v'hatzlacha.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.